Hello and welcome to Films and That. My name's Rob Turnbull.
And my name's Sam Hall.
And today we are doing a top 5 films of all time list.
For personal, each. And yeah, we've had a bit of a hiatus, but here we are, you know. So it's been a year, so nice to see you all again.
Yeah, so what we're going to do, we're going to pick our top 5, we're going to go from 5 to 1, alternating between us, and then we'll just kind of comment quickly on it, otherwise we'll be here all day.
There's a lot to say and we really do need to keep it succinct, but let's
go. Right. Let's get started then. So Sam, you go first. What's your number 5 pick?
My number 5 pick is Nosferatu by Friedrich Murnau. The vampire film, the German vampire film. I've liked it for a really long time. I keep on going back to it and I realised I think it's the silent film I've seen more than any other silent film. And it's probably is my favourite horror film ever, I suppose.
So you're a fan of German Expressionism in general?
In general, yes, although mainly the films of Murnau. And arguably, it's not his best film. It's kind of like the granddaddy of the vampire films, isn't it?
It's very influential. You see references to it all the time, and I'm primarily thinking of the fast show here.
Chelsea 2, United 1, Zola in the last minute of extra time. Put a monkey on it. Monster, monster, monster.
monster. And SpongeBob, he appeared in SpongeBob as well, didn't he? And quite a few other things. Yeah. I don't think the makeup has dated that much on the actor Max Schreck, who plays Nosferatu. I think that's still quite effective. I think the German expressionism is kind of like lends to the atmosphere of the film and is really, really powerful element of it. The shadows are basically the most famous thing about it, probably. The most famous clip is of him walking up the stairs. It's just literally his shadow projecting on the wall. And it's one of the creepiest things you can ever see. And that's what I think I like about it, is that it's a film that is now just over 100 years old and is still quite creepy. But I just wanted to say sort of one thing. I don't think there's a huge amount to say about Nosferatu, but I figured if we're going to do like a countdown film, we may as well do an unboxing video as well. And I'm bringing this out because it did cost me 20 quid, so I'm not going to leave it out. But yeah, I got a Nosferatu action figure. This film for me, it's like my Star Wars, I think. Okay. It's like I'm more interested in the image of that vampire. I've always liked that. I've talked about Shadow of a Vampire before on this channel. Oh, I can't be bothered to undo the thing. But there he is, everyone.
Did you buy that just for this?
Claws. Yes. Although I'll display it on a shelf somewhere.
Yeah. It comes with its own rat.
It comes with a little cartoon rat as well. So
my first pick.
Yeah.
It's 12 Monkeys.
It's upside down. There we go. Awesome. Terry Gilliam.
For Terry Gilliam. I did and ah about this because I watched it again recently and it is a bit nauseating to watch in some bits.
It's your first top 5 film.
So I was a bit like, I don't know if I can sit through this. But there's a bit when I think Brad Pitt and Bruce Willis are just shouting in the asylum. Which is like, this is a bit hard going.
Now, buy, sell, stock, buy, purchase, sell, yes!
What I like about this is a film about confusion. The plot of the film, there's been a viral outbreak and it's killed 99% of the world's population or something. People are sent back in time to try and figure out how this happened, to try and like research the virus and then hopefully cure it. And Bruce Willis is one of the people that's sent back in time to track down the army of the 12 monkeys. That's what everyone thinks started this virus, but they didn't.
Did you see this when you went back?
No, sir, I don't think so.
What about these people? Did you see any of these people?
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, really, because he sends back images which then are the reason he went to those places in the first place. So he kind of confuses himself, and there's a big like time loop thing.
The historic narrative that the people created for themselves in a way ends up kind of screwing them over. But a weird Brad Pitt performance as well.
I was interrogated, I was x-rayed, I was examined thoroughly.
He's a little bit scenery chewy, but just it's not something that he was typically sort of well known for. And in this, he doesn't look attractive at all, which is, he really, like you said, goes all in, playing a weird looking crazy guy.
Interestingly as well, I was watching some behind the scenes stuff, and Bruce Willis was really involved in the decision making of a lot of the scenes.
Really?
He's like, you can see him, he really cared about this film. He was behind the camera going, let's do this and this and this. And Terry Gilliam kind of just looked baffled through the entire process, because I don't think he enjoyed working with a studio.
Why does it matter?
Because if it's in your head, you wouldn't do that.
Why not?
Because you're in 1996.
I mean, it throws up so many things because the scientists haven't told us, the audience, and him, where it's got to go. So how big a deal is it that it's 1990 instead of 1996? We didn't even know 1990 was important.
He's famously wrestled, doesn't he, with studios and stuff.
So this, he didn't write this. So this was originally based on Le Jetée, a short film. And
I have seen that.
have seen
yeah,
that.
it's an unusual film because of the way it's
creepy, the way it's shot. It's like shot in stills, and then there's like one bit of it that's not a still, and then that kind of freaks you out because you're expecting it to be a still.
Yeah.
And then it was adapted by someone else, and then Gilliam was just brought on board to kind of put his flavour into things, which isn't really his style, but he made it his own, I think.
It does feel like a Terry Gilliam film.
All of the future stuff when they're all living underground, that's very Gilliam.
Very, very Gilliam, yeah. Very Brazil or whatever.
I heard that he spent so long getting a hamster to run around in a wheel in a background shot. And he spent like an hour on this, and then I had to look for it.
That's a crap hamster actor. You can't even get them to go in a wheel.
Yeah.
Terry that night was more preoccupied with getting the hamster to perform right than he was Bruce Willis.
The hamster's in there, and he's in his little wheel, and he's exercising.
I think it just kind of blew me away when I first saw it, because it's just so unlike anything else I've seen. And they end up not figuring out who released the virus. They don't succeed. The virus gets released anyway. It turns out just to be some random B character that doesn't have much to do with the plot at all. And I think I like that. I like that they went down this whole path that was just completely wrong. And they were so convinced that this one thing was happening, and it wasn't.
My fourth pick is Monty Python's The Life of Brian, another film that Terry Gilliam was involved with. And it was funded, I believe, by one of the Beatles, George Harrison, I think, through his company Handmade Films.
Are you the Judean People's Front? Fuck off. What? Well, the People's Front of Judea.
You can see here it's certified 15 by the BBFC. I was definitely not 15. I think I was probably about 5 when I first saw it.
I've not watched it past 15. I've watched it a lot when I was a kid, to be honest. It is that kind of like silliness, isn't it, that a kid would enjoy.
I have a very great friend in Rome called Biggus Dickus.
And then there's also some stuff that you shouldn't show to kids.
Yes, there's like full frontal nudity, and there's even a bit of blood actually in it. There's crucifix. It's quite gory.
The end always scarred me, actually, I think.
Really? Because
it's
it's a nice cheery song, isn't it?
But he's put on this cross and he's just going to die. And I think that kind of really got to me at the end.
I suppose, yeah. For whatever, I suppose it softened me to something like that, as horrifying as crucifixion. But if you don't know what Monty Python Life of Brian is about, it's about a man called Brian Cohen, who is mistaken to be the Messiah and King of the Jews.
By what name are you calling him? Brian! We worship you, O Brian.
And he doesn't want to be the Messiah. He's a political activist. He wants to get the Romans out of Judea. Just a bunch of people decide by accident that he's a prophet and he's going to be the savior of everyone. At the same time, Jesus is there. And you see very, very briefly in one, kind of like the opening scene, he's doing one of his sermons. And the big opening joke of that is that there's a bunch of people at the back of a crowd who are mishearing what Jesus is saying.
I think it was blessed are the cheesemakers.
And the whole film is like that, really. It's just like, I think it's meant to be a parody of big epic biblical movies that were made at the time. and ended up upsetting a lot of people.
But did you feel that the film actually ridiculed Jesus?
Yes, I did.
Even though it wasn't about him and...
Well, I'm afraid you see, I can't take it wasn't about him.
But it's really lasted the test of time or whatever. It's a lot of people still consider it one of the best comedy movies ever. And I've always liked it. I like the kind of the message of like being skeptical of like organized religion. I don't like the way that a lot of organized religions kind of work with companies and governments to like suppress people, and it kind of points out a lot of the hypocrisies involved in that kind of thing.
And I think it comes out, spelled out perhaps rather too plainly, rather too banally at one point, when he says, make up your own mind, don't let other people tell you. And we would absolutely deny, at least I would, that there was any attempt to say you should not believe in Christ. What we're saying is take a critical view, find out about it, don't just believe because somebody tells you to. Somebody in the pulpit says something, question it.
For me, it was important to have picks that are sort of like quite personal and not just films that are sort of like objectively good or, you know, beloved by critics or whatever.
Yeah, I've tried to not be too pretentious with my picks. Yeah. I've tried to think about films that if it was on TV, it just came on, I'd watch it, rather than this film's the best film ever. It's just films that I really like.
Yeah.
I was thinking this was BBC. It feels very BBC, but it's not. Sony Pictures.
Sony Pictures now, yeah. But the production company was Handmade Films, which was largely funded. They really struggled to get funding for it initially because people worried about the backlash, and it turns out there was a backlash. So,
fair enough.
That's all I have to say about that.
Always look on the right side of life.
So going on not critically renowned films, my next pick is Goldeneye.
Oh, okay. I don't have any Bond films. I know you're a big Bond fan.
Watched a lot of Bond films when I was younger with my dad. So they were always a special place in my heart. I know there's problems with them, particularly with how much of an arsehole James Bond is. But this was the first film I ever saw where the protagonist was an arsehole and people called him out on it, if you know what I mean. M calls him a misogynist dinosaur at one point.
Because I think you're a sexist, misogynist dinosaur, a relic of the Cold War.
You know, this sort of behaviour could qualify as sexual harassment.
What's the matter, James? No glib remark? No pithy comeback?
How can you act like this? How can you be so cold? It's what keeps you alone.
What would I ever do without you?
As far as I can remember, James, you've never had me.
You wouldn't have got that from the films, you know, from like Sean Connery's Bond. It was all very kind of glorifying that. And it was the first time I kind of realised, oh, he doesn't have to be wholly good, if you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So he is a bit rubbish throughout the entire film. One of my favourite bits is at the end of the film, he doesn't even stop the baddie's plot. He tells the Bond girl, oh yeah, stay here while I sort it out. She doesn't, she fucks off. He goes in guns blazing, gets immediately captured. Meanwhile, she's hacking into the mainframe, shutting down Goldeneye. She solves the problem while Bond's just being shit and doing nothing, just chatting.
You break into the Bank of England via computer, then transfer the money electronically. Ingenious.
Thank you, James.
His plot isn't to like take over the world, it's just to steal money from the stock exchange in London.
Great.
Just to hack into it and steal money, which is a really legitimate kind of thing that people would want to do.
Yeah. So basically the most sympathetic character is the baddie.
Yeah. Yeah, and his backstory is that he got his family got murdered by the British government.
It's okay. So it's difficult not to root for him.
The British betrayed them, sent them back to Stalin, who promptly had them all shot. Women, children, families.
It really kind of opened my eyes to a different way of filmmaking. It is a great film. It started the change for Bond, I think, because it's the same writer that wrote for Casino Royale, which really changed.
Yeah, that was a huge hit. Daniel Craig one, right? Not the Niven one, was it? David Niven?
Yeah, which isn't an official Bond film.
No. Is that because it was just, what was it, just too crap or something?
No, they didn't have the rights to make it. Eon Production, the guys that made all the official Bond films.
Is Brosnan your favourite Bond?
I think so. The rest of the Brosnan Bond films are a bit shit, though.
Yeah.
This is by far the best one. I would say.
I remember it was a huge hit at the time it came out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of the best Bond films by far, I think. I do like Dalton's Bond, actually, because he's psychotic. He would be like that, wouldn't he? He's a paid assassin, essentially. He's not a spy, he's an assassin. And he goes around like swanky bars, kind of ordering pretentious cocktails. Sean Bean's got a good line where he says, do all the vodka martinis silence the screams of the men you've killed?
That's brilliant.
I might as well ask you if all the vodka martinis ever silence the screams of all the men you've killed. Or if you find forgiveness in the arms of all those willing women. For all the dead ones you failed to protect.
My next pick is Markéta Lazarova, directed by František Vasil. So I know we were just talking about not having any pretentious, and I understand that, but it is one of these films that's really grown on me. It's a really kind of grotty depiction of medieval life. It's not clean at all. They made the actors live in those conditions, much to their chagrin. They were pretty upset about having to sleep in a muddy field or whatever. Freezing cold. You can see how cold it is in the film. The premise of the film is it's about these kind of rival clans. They end up kidnapping the son of a Saxon count. This sort of makes the king in the area pissed off, and he sends like an army after this guy. None of the people in this film are very moral people, really. You know, they like to have certain morals and pretend to be upstanding people, but really they're all just kind of in it for themselves. One of the main characters falls in love with the titular character, Markéta Lazarova. He kidnaps and abuses her, but then it ends up becoming a Stockholm syndrome thing, and they end up falling in love. So there's a lot of dark themes. But what I really love about the film, other than the amazing cinematography, is it's so bizarre and weird and quite hard to follow. Every time I watch it, I'm sort of trying to make sense of certain things, and it's like they used all these different revolutionary styles. They didn't stick to one style. There's fourth wall breaking. There's a monk who ends up talking to the camera at one point. And I think the narrator is maybe meant to be God talking to this monk, and the monk's sort of like offended by the narrator. That's like a Monty Python thing. And then there's scenes where they're filming people up close, and then there's people having conversations around them who you can't see. It's like an assault on the senses in a way. You know, it's just not what you're used to when you see a film.
Sounds really impenetrable from what you just described it. I have no idea what it's
I think
actually
a little
about.
bit, yeah. I think it's technically it's about these rival clans and people screwing each other over. Also, just kind of about medieval life. I think it was meant to be like, let's make it like a kind of documentary about what it would feel like to live in medieval times. There's an amazing shot I love with these dogs in the snow all looking towards the camera, and you can basically just pretty much see their outline. Such an incredible shot. I love it.
Yeah. My film had a tank chase though.
Yes, it did, yeah. But this has a dog chase, which is just as good.
So my next pick is one we've done previously on this channel.
Oh, awesome.
So I'm not going to go into too much detail on this because we did do a whole video on this.
Yes.
But it's Videodrome by David Cronenberg.
Videodrome is death.
I love David Cronenberg as a director. He's done a lot of films I really love. He's really good at body horror, and this goes down that route quite significantly. It's got such an interesting and bizarre premise of a TV show that makes you have a brain tumour, which then affects the way you see the world. And I like the ideas of, there's a character that uploads himself on videotapes, and he only ever talks to people on videotaped recordings.
Whatever appears on the television screen emerges as raw experience for those who watch it.
It's a very forward-looking way of how people actually interact, and it's sort of how we are doing that now.
But it did it with like the technology of the time, kind of predicted something that hadn't happened yet, but with really what is now really dated technology.
Well, I really like retro future stuff. I think it comes from watching Red Dwarf and seeing like CRT TVs on a spaceship in the future, because obviously they didn't know about flat screens.
It's kind of like almost like a similar to steampunk or something, isn't it? Like, yeah, a mix of old technology and future technology.
Yeah, Gilliam does a lot of that actually, which is why I like his kind of aesthetic.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking of the tiny CRTs in Brazil with the magnifying glasses in front of them.
Yeah.
That's their solution to having a small TV, it's just a magnifying glass. Don't make a bigger one.
Cronenberg, is really just everything he makes is his own.
Yeah, very distinct style, uses a lot of weird props. There's a videotape that comes alive at one point. And then James Woods has like a weird organic gun for a hand.
Was it Existence? He did the organic gun thing as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although I think it's pronounced Existence.
Oh, okay.
And they had like little nodules that you interface with, and it kind of went bloop inside people.
Ooh. That does freak you out a bit though, doesn't it, to think about it.
Well, that's the point though, and I like films that make you have a reaction in some way.
Like, it's a great film, but it's I get a bit funny about anatomy, I think, and things like that. It does make me, you know.
Yeah, The Fly as well is another one of his greats.
God, that film.
That's disgusting.
But yeah, like I say, not much more to say about this, I don't think. But yeah, really good film.
Get the Videodrome! Long live the new flesh!
My number 2 pick is a classic that most people are going to know. It's the original Godfather movie. It was pretty much that film that made me go, oh, okay, so this isn't just entertainment, this is art. Just one of those things that made me really, really fall in love with film, I think. And I saw it when I was about 15, I believe.
You don't offer friendship. You don't even think to call me Godfather. Instead, you come into my house on the day my daughter's to be married and you ask me to do murder for money.
So if you're not aware of the premise, and I'm sure most people are by now, it's just about a family of gangsters centering around the transition of power from the older gangster played by Marlon Brando and his son, who he didn't really want to take over but ends up taking over anyway, played by Al Pacino. Probably like the biggest gangster movie influence on everything from The Sopranos to Grand Theft Auto, anything to do with gangsters or crime movies or whatever. Everybody, it's become like the template for it. And I think the things I like about it is, other than the ridiculous amount of amazing visuals and endless number of quotable lines like leave the gun, take the cannoli, that big one.
Leave the gun. Take the cannoli.
I found the kind of world within a world, a society within a society. I've always found that idea really interesting. Like a people who function in a completely different world to ourselves, that they have to sort of wrestle with the rest of society. Saying one thing and doing another, saying, oh, I'm doing this for the family, and then really you're screwing your family over. I like all these lines, it's just business, that's a really like recurring line in the film.
Tell Mike it was only business. I always liked him.
And they keep on using this kind of excuse all the way through, and it's like they consider death a business proposition or whatever, you know, like just, oh, you know, we just had to do it, you know, and I find that interesting and sort of quite sad and sadistic at the same time.
It's not personal, Sonny. It's strictly business.
Mainly, it's the way the film is made, you know, because there's just so much to look at and listen to. The music is incredible, the acting is incredible. There's everyone in this movie, apart from Marlon Brando, pretty much was an unknown, and then ended up becoming superstars after the movie came out.
Yeah, it is very theatrical. It's like an opera. What I really like about it is that Michael doesn't want to be involved in the family, and he gets dragged into it anyway. That
Yeah,
kind of reluctance.
I found that really interesting as well. If anything, ends up becoming like the most committed.
But if Clemenza can figure a way to have a weapon planted there for me, then I'll kill them both.
That's what I like about gangster films, is when it shows how people got to that position. Because if you think of just someone that's so cold and so calculating in murdering people and committing crimes, that seems like such another world to what you would do. And you kind of think, how would someone do that? But showing the progression from innocent to complicit in that family, I think that's the interesting step, because you really understand how he's got there. And people do get there, obviously. The gangsters exist. And you can't imagine that they think they're evil people. You've got to think that they're doing the best for their family, or they think they have to do that.
But it's a different world, and they're able to sort of justify it in their own way, and it's strictly business or whatever is one of the ways that they do that.
And if by chance an honest man like yourself should make enemies, then he would become my enemies. And then they would fear you.
Drum roll.
I'm trying to remember what it is. I can only see the backs of them. So it's Casablanca.
Oh, awesome.
This is an absolute classic. I just absolutely love it. It's such a classic film. It does nothing. Oh, shit. But yeah, it's such an absolute classic. And it does nothing wrong from a filmic perspective. Everything's perfect. Like the character of Rick Blaine, the main character played by Humphrey Bogart.
When they come to get me, Rick, I hope you'll be more of a help.
I'd stick my neck out for nobody.
He starts the film as being quite, I'm not getting involved in anyone's problems. I'm just looking out for myself. But he has this underlying aspect to his personality that he does always want to do the right thing.
Have you tried 22 tonight? I said 22.
22! La paire et passe. Marc Colligin, mesdames et messieurs, les jeux sont
Just a lucky guy.
It's a bit similar to like a Clint Eastwood character or John Wayne or whatever. Starts out as a kind of a loner who doesn't want to get involved in anyone's business, and ends up completely changing people's lives and stuff by the end of it. My favourite Casablanca reference, I think, is in the video game Grim Fandango. They're quite heavily referencing Casablanca, actually, in a game about the Mexican afterlife.
Casablanca is where people get exit visas to go to America, or go to Lisbon and then fly to America to escape World War II. And it's sort of like the last hope of people escaping this horrible situation. And they all end up at Rick's bar. And he comes across these exit visas, which are irrefutable, and they can be given to anyone and anyone can leave the country. And his old flame turns up. So it's quite a simple love story at the heart of it. And his old flame has a husband that he didn't know about. And it's all about the dynamic between them. What's Rick going to do? Is he going to let them have these exit visas?
Let's see, the last time we met.
Was La Belle Aurore.
How nice, you remembered. But of course that was the day the Germans marched into Paris.
I remember every detail. The Germans wore grey, you wore blue.
There's so much like witty dialogue as well. There's a bit I noticed where this German couple are learning to speak English. I started learning German in the last year.
Oh, okay. And like you do.
Yeah, which is another story. But I noticed that there's some really clever jokes about the German language in that conversation. The German for watch and hour is the same. So they just go watch, watch, because they just think the translation's direct.
What watch? 10 watts. Such much?
You will get along beautifully in America.
But that's a really clever bit of writing that would have gone unnoticed for most people. I didn't notice that until last year.
It's weird. It's kind of like at a time when Hollywood wasn't like so cynical. They still really cared about the end product and everything. It had to be really, really like concise and careful. And the detail, that kind of detail is really important. And when you think about it, like, it's quite, in a way, it's a surprise hit, isn't it? Like, a lot of the money would go into these sort of like biblical epics or something, the grand films, you know. And this isn't a massively expensive movie, but it just ends up working really well.
Yeah, it's fairly low key, but like you say, it's very detail oriented, and then it ends up being a perfect film. And it's really mad as well because it was plagued with trouble during the production. So they sort of like wrote it as they went along.
We never knew what we were doing from one day to the other. So it seems very strange that that picture, of all pictures that were much better organized and written, that one with all the confusion and script written day by day, and Humphrey Bogart was very bad humor because he never knew what he was going to do next. That one became a classic.
But I think there's just a real simplicity to it, that you know what all the characters' goals are at any point. So from a screenwriting perspective, it's really good. I think that's probably why I like it.
It's also famously one of the most misquoted movies ever. Play It Again, Sam, of all the bars in all the worlds, both lines that aren't in the film, I think.
Yeah, he says variations on that.
You played it for her, you play it for me.
Well, I don't think I can remember.
If she can stand it, I can. Play it. Of all the gin joints in all the towns in all the world, she walks into mine.
My number one pick favourite movie of all time, and there's not a lot in it, and it's The Passion of Joan of Arc by Carl Theodor Dreyer. It's a really, really solid film. I think it's probably, they perfected the art of filming actors in silent. It's all about the visual expression of the actors. It's anti-action, pretty much. You know, it's all dialogue, and everything is paced in a way that's very, very slow. The script is based on the actual transcripts of the trial of Joan of Arc before her death. It comes out as if the trial is constructed against her to make her look bad, and it kind of just ends up making the people that set up the trial look bad and make it look like the trial was just set up just to screw her over. And the film, I think, captures that brilliantly, and it's incredibly well acted. It's full of close-ups of all the actors and all the characters, and you can see like the details, like the contours and the wrinkles in their faces. It just says so much with close-ups. And it ends within a really tragic note because if you're familiar with history, Joan of Arc was burnt at the stake as a heretic. They killed her as to prove something. And I think that's really, really powerful. And to know that it's something that really happened as well is what makes this film really effective for me. I'm not a very religious person, actually, but the way when you watch a movie about a sport that you don't care about and you end up really liking the film, even if you don't care about the sport, it's kind of like that for me. I people who are really, really passionate about their faith and are able to interpret it really, really well and really intelligently, I really appreciate. And I feel like Carl Dreyer is really like sort of the person who's sort of got me closest to God as someone who isn't a religious person, if that makes sense.
So, Starship Troopers, this probably wasn't a surprise to you, as my pick for first film.
Come on, you hate! You want to live forever?
So it's set during a time period in the future where democracy has failed and the military has taken over. In order to vote, you have to go into military service or become a citizen, basically, to do anything effective in society. Anyone that's above 30 is just disfigured.
Infantry, sir.
Good for you. Mobile infantry made me the man I am today.
It's all kind of glossed over as that's just what happens. So it's a really kind of pessimistic and depressing future,
but presented in a weird way where they're like, oh, but we like it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that kind of goes back into, it's based on a book which the writer of the book really thought that was the future. He really believed that's what we should be doing. So it's the thing again with RoboCop where Verhoeven took a script that was on face value and just flipped it and made it sarcastic and said, if this actually happened, it'd be horrible. And the way it's presented is the first half of the film is like a teen drama. So like 90210 or I'm trying to think of another one.
Saved by the Bell?
Yeah. It's all set in like a high school. They're falling in love with each other and all the things that teenagers would do, except there's this horrible backdrop of they're going to war. Smack bang in the middle, it flips and it becomes this horrible waking nightmare. They go off to fight these bugs and they don't win. Everyone's just completely devastated.
They're kind of incompetent as well, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they're incompetent because they believe so much in their own ability. And I think that speaks to how America sees the world, if you know what I mean? That's what I really liked about it, is that there's no like happy ending and everyone involved in the war just becomes more and more indoctrinated into this system. And it's this kind of endless cycle.
Fully automatic burrito. Who wants to hold it?
Citizen rule. People making a better tomorrow.
There's lots of like advert breaks and like, do you want to know more about the war? And it's all propaganda. And it's sort of like, that's how the film is presented to the audience.
Yeah.
I find the structure of it really interesting because it's really positive at the beginning. And you've got this newscaster who is presenting on the battlefield like it's just some kind of tourist event. And then he gets hideously maimed. And then the cameraman's just filming it. Like so detached from reality.
Yeah, glorification of violence and dehumanizing humans.
A bit of a weird film financially. It did really badly. And I kind of maintain it's the most expensive art film ever made. I don't think the studios knew what they were getting into when they gave Verhoeven a load of money.
The regime at Sony, where we started the movie, changed every 3-4 months. So we got away with it because nobody saw it. You know? And then when it was done, I remember Lucy Fisher, who was vice president at that time, looking at me and saying, well, these are Nazi flags. And I remember saying, yeah, but it's a different color, really.
I think it was just too confusing in the way it was structured. Because it's also trying to have its cake and eat it in the sense that it is this big budget action film. There's lots of great special effects. The CGI and the bug movement and all that kind of stuff is excellent. And it's like 20 years old at this point. There's use of miniature ships as well. All that looks great. So there's all this effort that's gone into it. And then to make it kind of silly and sarcastic in places, I think it confused people a bit.
From Starship Troopers the movie, it's the bug-bashing battle of the universe. And now you can help stop this alien bug invasion.
Look out! More bugs crawling our way! MI troops, man the attack fighter!
Now blast the warrior bug apart!
One of my favourite bits of the film is when they're first landing on the planet. They all swarm out of the dropships like insects.
Yeah.
And there's this whole theme of, because they're bugs, they're stupid. And they're not going to win this war because we're better than them. And then there's a real clear parallel of these humans running around like insects.
Yeah.
I just think that works so well.
Huge reference to like colonization as well. It's a very political film.
That's the other thing. They started the war, the humans.
Yeah.
And the bugs are just defending themselves.
Some say the bugs were provoked by the intrusion of humans into their natural habitat. That a live and let live policy is preferable to war with the bugs.
Let me tell you something. I'm from Buenos Aires, and I say kill them all! Yeah! Oh, yeah!
You're sort of on the side of the bugs here.
Yeah. Even though they're the most like distant from humanity they could possibly be.
Yeah, they're horrific.
Yeah.
They're just trying to defend their territory and humans are coming in and destroying that.
Yeah, it's like a better executed than that film Small Soldiers. That was doing a similar thing of making the alien weirdos the good guys and the military humans the bad guys.
Yeah, that needed Paul Verhoeven to direct that,
yeah.
didn't it? Make it hideously violent for no reason.
Open fire!
How do we end this one? Should have researched maybe what people normally do for outros, but subscribe to watchmojo.com.
Yeah, let's say that. Subscribe to Watch, not to this channel. Okay, that's our top 5 lists of favourite films of all time. So thanks for watching, thanks for subscribing, and if you want to support Films and That, please consider subscribing on Patreon.
Goodbye.